Hello, my name is Gail Seiler, and I'm honored to be here representing Betrayal Project USA. We are a victim led organization dedicated to exposing institutional betrayal, particularly those during COVID-19, under the guise of COVID-19, and honoring those who've been lost and pursuing justice for crimes committed against humanity under the guise of public health during the pandemic. You can learn more about our work, view victim stories, or submit your story and get involved by visiting our website at betrayalprojectusa.org. That's betrayalprojectusa.org. You can also follow us on Rumble, BitChute, and X, formerly Twitter. We have a Saturday Spaces every Saturday by searching for Betrayal Project USA or simply going to our website and clicking the links for our social media and our Substack. Today, I have the privilege of speaking to Dorothy, who is both a survivor and her husband was killed by the protocols in California. Dorothy, so let's start off by telling people who Paul was and how your life was before the pandemic.
Okay, thank you, Gail. My husband at the time of his passing was a full-time real estate appraiser and real estate broker, and I was his agent. My husband had been a real estate broker and agent for a broker, and appraiser for almost 39 years. He was still working full time. He and I first met in New York State, and then I ended up following him to California, and we married, and we were married 43 years at the time of his passing, and we had 4 children, and we're living in California. He was a Vietnam veteran, and he also actually he ran for Congress twice, and he was just a wonderful man, a great father to his children, and a wonderful husband. He had so much strength through some of the things that he went through. He wasn't always well, but my gosh, he actually ended up having a 4-way bypass and going right back to work. That's kind of uncertain. and was so proud of him, was so proud of his strength. So proud of the things that he was able to do.
Awesome. Thank you. So, and you both sang in the choir, right, at your church together. So
yes, we both sang in the choir for over 30 years, and we were both very involved, and yeah, and that was what was so hard in 2020 when we were both at choir practice, and the elders of the church came down and told us they were closing the church that Sunday, and we were both very upset. We didn't think that it was that necessary, but of course, the mainstream media, what they did, the stories that they put out, made it very difficult for them to continue.
Yeah, exactly, because there was a lot of hype. I mean, a lot of hype, and
Exactly.
yeah, I recall that. And so, so take because your story takes place what I would say very early in the pandemic. It wasn't like the right away in 20, well, it was kind of starting in 2020, but more in early 2021. So take us through. Eventually, you both got sick and ended up in the hospital. Let's talk about how that came about.
My husband, as a real estate appraiser, was out and about. Um, Most people were kind of stunned, but what could we do? He needed to work. Um, he was careful. If people were insistent that he wore a mask, he would do it. He was not really feeling that it made any difference. He knew he wasn't sick. Um, but, by the summer of 2020, we were not able to see family. We were not able to see anyone. And so when Christmas came that year, um, just before that, he had fallen and he'd injured his shoulder, and I had taken him to the emergency room. And just so you know, when we got to the emergency room in December, there was a giant tent outside, just a side effect or side thing, but there was nobody in it.
Yeah.
And then we weren't allowed to come in the hospital in December. It was pretty cold. We're sitting outside on chairs. And then I knocked on the door and said, "Look, my husband's out here and he's getting cold. Could you please?" So they brought up some warm blankets to put around him. And I said, "Well, yeah, but you have a tent here and there's nobody in it," interestingly.
Yeah.
Anyway, by Christmas, I said to him, "Well, look, we're not going to see family. We're not going to put up any decorations." I said, "We've been invited to go up to Idaho to see our friends." He says, "Okay, let's go. You drive." And so we went up and we were gone for all of Christmas. And we came back before New Year's. And so it was by Friday, January 9th. We weren't well. Neither one of us were well. And he went to the VA and they took a COVID test and told him that he had COVID. They told us that we should stay home until we were having problems breathing. Well, very early on the morning of Monday, January 11th, he told me I would have to take him to the hospital as he was coughing too much and he could not breathe. I drove him to Sutter Hospital in Santa Rosa early that morning. I was only allowed to say goodbye outside, not allowed in the hospital. And I drove home knowing I was also ill. Stopped to get some breakfast, went home and slept. That he called me from the hospital that afternoon. He told me, "They told me if I don't go on a ventilator, I will die. So I'm calling you to tell you that I love you." And then the
Oh,
phone went dead. It was the last time I spoke to him, and he was placed in intensive care with a ventilator.
so, so they got him to go on the ventilator right away. Do you
Yes,
know do you know by any chance what his oxygen level was when they did that?
no,
Okay.
I don't. I mean, and as I will mention later, I then pulled his hospital records. There was 240 pages of hospital records that they sent me that I went through, and that was well, we'll get into it later.
Yeah. That's okay. So that was the last time you spoke to him. And
Yes,
then how many days was it before you went in the hospital?
I drove myself to Sutter 3 days later after talking with the doctor who called me to tell me how Paul was. I was coughing so badly. I was too ill, he said, to continue at home. I barely remember those days at home. I couldn't tell you if I ate or slept or talked to anyone. I called my son, who asked if I could drive to the hospital. I told him that I thought I could. And so he followed me in his car. And he said I was a bit erratic. He was worried with the possibility of COVID danger about driving me himself. I remember parking the car and walking to the door and nothing else for a while that day. The next thing I knew, I was in ER and they said they had a room for me upstairs. They placed me on the same same floor as my husband in a regular room. From then on, my family members were monitoring both of us.
Uh-huh.
I was given oxygen, but was not placed on a ventilator. Then the records showed, after I checked which drugs were given to me, about 5 days later, on the 18th, our entire family was notified on a Zoom call that Paul would not survive the night. I asked the doctor to please give Paul a chance to live. They asked what efforts should be taken if he went into cardiac arrest. And I said, do whatever you can. Do whatever you can.
Yeah. What drug do you recall what drugs he was given? I mean, obviously he was probably given propofol because he was on a vent and that stops your breathing to let the vent breathe. But do you know, was he given um things like, well, it would, I think Precedex is also known as Dex Meta.
Dexamethasone, Decadron. Yes, he was given Decadron. He was given units of remdesivir. He was also given a paralytic drug,
Yeah.
amio. I can't pronounce it in infusion. And when he was placed on the ventilator with the fear of death, he was asked if he had a DNR. So yeah, there may have been other drugs. When I asked for all of the hospital records, it was 8 months after he passed away, and
Sure.
they gave me 206 pages. And
Yeah.
it took me a while to go through them and also to figure out exactly what he was given. And since then, I was asked through another lady to get a more comprehensive list of hospital records.
Yeah.
They sent it to me about a year ago, 1,086 pages.
Mhm.
I
Did they
I
send it
didn't.
paper or electronic?
They gave me a zip drive.
Okay,
A
zip
zip
drive.
drive, and they also gave me my records. So, I mean, I know I was given remdesivir. Um, I I couldn't go through anymore. I didn't want to know anymore about what else we were given. I just couldn't handle it. Every time I would sit down to do it, it was too much. You know? And anyway, to get back to the to what happened with him, um, I was taken to see him in a wheelchair the evening they told me that he was going to die. I tried to say my goodbyes. I agonized that I left him alone to die. My son reminded me later that I was too sick to stay with him. Uh, at 3:30 the next morning, I woke up and I knew he was gone. My children called to tell me an hour later, and I told them I already knew. I somehow felt that he came to see me to say goodbye. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So
Um,
so during that time, because it was 10 days that he was there, and
it was 8. He was there 8 days. He
8
was
days.
there 8 days. Yeah, from the 11th, and he passed away 3:30 on the evening of the 19th.
Okay. So
Yeah,
on, um, and they brought you in to sit, and that was the first time and only time what day did you go in the hospital?
I went in on the 14th.
The 14th. Okay.
Yes,
So in the 4 days that you were there while he was there, was that the only time that they wheeled you in to go see him?
yes, and of course he was unconscious.
Yeah.
His face was turned the other way. The hospital bed was too high. I could barely touch his shoulder or his head, and his head was turned the other way. there were things I couldn't see. That when I read the records, I read that they had to take the ventilator out at one point, and when they did, that there was a rush of blood, and that somehow he had a sore on his face, but his face was turned the other way, and so I couldn't see it. And I also didn't know until reading the records that his hands were tied to the bed from the time they put him on the ventilator because he kept trying to take it out.
Mm. Um, yeah, and do you know if he was either pressured into a DNR, or did he actually sign a DNR?
No, he didn't sign a DNR, and they did ask me, but I don't remember when they asked me. But we said that he didn't have one when they asked, and we said no, he doesn't have one.
Right.
He might have had one once before, a long time ago, when he had the four-way bypass. I don't know, but being the fact that this is a man who just
Yeah.
would work full time. I mean, he was always on the go and just very active. I mean, play
Yeah,
the
he
piano. That's so much fun. Like, you
probably
know.
did. Yeah. Right. Um, okay, and so you felt, you knew in your heart that he he was he was gone. Did they come in, did the nursing staff ever come in and tell you that he passed?
No, I don't remember them coming in to tell them. Tell me all I remember is the phone call from I don't know which ones of my children, but
Yeah.
that but then the nurses came in. Well, no, they came in the next morning. They did a chest X-ray of me that morning, and it showed I had pneumonia. I don't remember those days very well. I was numb, and whenever I would think about what happened, I realized his death was going to make major changes to my life. I was contact in the hospital on another ongoing situation that Paul was handling that I was now going to be mine to handle. I was not certain I could take care of it. Everything needed to be done now. I was not certain I was strong enough.
Yeah.
My children started making plans for his burial and memorial service. They would call the hospital and tell me what plans they were trying to make. My son informed me that he could be buried in the Presidio since he was in the army. And I told him I felt Paul would want to be buried where he loved because he loved Santa Rosa. So my daughter found a good site for him. My other daughter was working on a newspaper article because of all of his involvement, and my older son working on a website. So because we knew we could only have 10 people at his memorial, and we wanted to be able to send it on to people who could not attend. Um, then then my older son called me to tell me they found that they could file with FEMA, and FEMA would pay for his burial since his death certificate stated he died of COVID. So our children paid for Paul's burial, and FEMA reimbursed them. Later, I was incensed by this when I understood about the protocols. And I felt like I don't understand. Why would FEMA pay for my
Mhm.
husband's burial? Why? Why? Because it said COVID? That doesn't make sense. Why is government paying
For yeah.
for his for his burial? Why would they do that? I mean, my son said, "Well, this way you don't need to worry about it." I said, "But I don't understand."
Yeah, because because initially people think my loved one died of COVID, and there's that confusion, right, in the beginning, right? Like, you're, because
Yes.
COVID happened, and then it takes families, if they ever even start thinking about the protocol, it takes them a very long time to realize that it was the protocol. And by then, people have already gotten the FEMA money and they've already said, "Oh yeah, it was COVID," because it's on the death certificate, what have you. But
Yeah.
how long were you in the hospital after Paul passed?
After my husband passed, I stayed in the hospital for another week because I had pneumonia.
Yeah.
Um, I left the hospital on January 24th, 2021, with a diagnosis of something called sinus bradycardia, slow heart rate. That meant very little to me at that point, but later, by March 2024, became an important issue.
Hmm.
When I when I came home from the hospital, as I said, I had pneumonia. It was hard for me to breathe. It's hard for me to do a lot of things. My niece from Kansas arrived before I came home, and she brought me home from the hospital and stayed with me until his memorial service. So many people were afraid of what it meant to be in the hospital with COVID. My neighbors were nervous about me. My my family was nervous about me. They wouldn't come in my house. They they brought food outside, and we ate outside, but everyone was didn't really want to come near me. I understood they were afraid.
Fear is a
Um,
motivator, yeah.
yes, they were afraid that I was dangerous to them. They wouldn't come in the house, and I couldn't go into theirs. They wanted me to have the vaccination. My daughter had called me about a month or so after he died and said, "Mom, I've made an appointment for you to have your vaccination in Windsor." And I said, "But I'm not going to do that." And she said, "Well, Mom, I don't know if we can ever see you again if you don't take the vaccination." And I didn't know what to say. I told her, I said, your mom's not exactly been vaccination prone for a long time. I don't think I think I had one in 1993 when I stepped on a rusty nail and had tetanus
Yeah.
shot.
That,
But other than that, I'm not exactly pro pro vaccinations.
well,
Um,
plus you would have had the antibodies because you just had like the antibodies.
exactly
Yeah,
right.
right.
And when I had come up here to Idaho, I'd gone to Dr. Ryan Cole's lab.
Mhm.
I had had to I had had an immunity certificate, and 3 months after my husband died, my older sister was dying in New York. Because I had an immunity certificate from Dr. Cole, I was able to fly back and see my other sister and try to go see my sister in upstate New York. Unfortunately, she passed away the morning that we were driving up to see her. So that was horrendous. And anyway, yeah, it was.
I didn't
I'm
even
sorry.
I hadn't even realized there was such a thing as an immunity certificate. That's interesting. Okay. So so you had it I'm assuming they did it was a blood test and then they
Yes,
said you had antibodies and they gave you
yes,
that.
yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
I had it done twice. I had
Oh,
it
okay.
done twice. Yeah. And I mean, it made it easy for me to go see my sister, and I was
Sure.
able to see my son in New York. Um, I'm very grateful for that. I mean, thank you to Ryan Cole when I got a chance to see him in 2023. I gave him a hug and I told him, "Thank you so much. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to see family at all." You know, um,
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, it was yeah, so, it was the 8 months later thing that was my wake-up call.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how long did it take you to recover at home? And then we'll get into the wake up call.
Well, my niece stayed with me for about 8 days, and then my other niece, who happened to have been, a COVID nurse in Texas, she flew in, um, she, uh she flew in from Texas, and stayed with me for about 7 or 8 days. Proceeded to tell my children, hey, you can spend time with her, you can be with her. And so while she was there, they did. Interesting thing about that, though, is my niece never said anything about anything she had seen about COVID, whether she had any, but I'm sure she did have some questions. But she never relayed them to me. And she flew back to Houston, and when it was the middle of that horrible frost and everything that went on in Houston. And interestingly enough, last year, even though she was not 65, she retired as a nurse. We never talked about it. She never said anything, but I wonder how much did she know and she didn't want to talk about it. It's possible, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
very,
possible.
yeah, very possible, right?
Yeah. She said
Um,
she said that she said that because she'd been there when Paul and I were married. She was like 13, and she knew him well. And she told me that when she heard that Paul died, that was when she sobbed. It affected her so much.
um, so she stayed with you, and then you
And
were
then she went
recovering,
home.
and then she
Yeah,
went.
but yeah, she went home. I because of the pneumonia, it was very hard for me. Um, Everybody wanted me wearing a mask when I went into stores.
Wow.
And because I'd had pneumonia, I was having a very hard time doing that. One store in particular that I remember, they said that if I didn't wear a mask, I couldn't come in, but they had customer service come out and
Mhm.
take my order and bring my food out to me. Because they just said, well, you have to come in. If you're going to come in, you have to wear a mask. And what could I say? So
Exactly.
I went along with what they wanted.
So what? So talk about the wake up call. So 8 months happen, and are you researching things and more stuff is? I mean, obviously more stuff was coming out in 2021, and and there were these um a lot of COVID symposiums from the frontline doctors started to happen, and they were really trying to get the word out about the protocols and not to take the shots and stuff like that. So take us through how did the wake up call happen? I mean, you were always grassroots because you ran he ran as a grassroots congressman, but how did that wake up call occur, and what was the process?
A good friend of mine. I'm going to hesitate about naming names,
Yeah.
okay? Either there or with the doctor, even though I give him so much credit and still do, and I'm in touch with him. Um, uh, she proceeded to show me a video of that doctor and what he had found. Um, I was stunned, and suddenly certain things made sense that maybe didn't make sense before. So 8 months later, it was about September, I applied to Sutter Hospital for both Paul's records and my own. And what I read was very disturbing. I found that while we were there, we were both given remdesivir. And I subsequently found that not only did it affect him, so that when I was reading his records, it said that they had noticed that his urine level had gone down, and underneath it was no comment. So they knew, they
Yeah.
knew that his
Right.
kidneys were being affected.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, I found information that said that remdesivir was directly connected to my sinus
Hmm.
bradycardia diagnosis. And I was stunned. The more that I read, the more shocked I was, the more I realized. And then I said, "Oh my God, we were, we were right before the vaccine. We were right before things started to get more. There were things that were out there that hadn't been there before, and then you had to go to alternative news because mainstream news had manipulated everything. and how well the lies were continued. I
Yeah.
mean, I was then in touch with others who had concerns. And then, I mean, when I finally came up here, I heard from people who said they did not know anyone who was injured or lost someone in the hospital. I was their first contact with something and someone who had seemingly been injured, and they began to understand there was a fiasco and a
Mhm.
lie. And then
Yeah.
I refused to be silent.
Yeah.
I couldn't be silent. I mean, all I could think of is, what did you do? What did you do to him? Look what
Yeah.
you did to me. Look what you did to me. You know, and he didn't deserve that. And he didn't
Right.
deserve, he should have been treated correctly. I mean, I knew when we went into the hospital, I'd heard about ivermectin.
Uh-huh.
I had heard about, oh gosh, and I didn't know where to get it. And one of my friends afterwards said, "Well, why didn't you get it?" I said, "From who?
Right.
Where? Who was
Yeah,
going to listen?
they
Who was
made
going
it
to
so
listen?"
hard to get. They made it,
Yeah,
I mean, there was literally a war on hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin,
sure.
budesonide, anything that worked.
Yes, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. That just stunned me. It stunned me, and for me, I mean, should I continue with where I was after that, or just let you
Yep.
go on?
You were waking up. Yeah,
Yeah,
your friend was like, why didn't you get it?" You're like, "Where would I get it?"
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Right. I mean, I was hurt that she said that, but I understood. You know, I mean, because when you discover there's something that could work, that hydroxychloroquine work, that ivermectin would work. I mean, afterwards, I'm saying, well, how do I protect my children? But by then, one by one, they were getting their vaccination, and there was nothing that I could say to them, and it broke my heart. It broke my heart because I couldn't talk. I mean, and you would think that maybe I could be able to talk because I was right in the middle of it, but they didn't realize how the mainstream news was keeping the truth away from them.
The censorship and the propaganda and all of that.
Yeah,
And
and yeah.
they know, the media knows fear is a huge motivator to do things, and so they
Oh,
created, I call it fear porn, but they created
oh, sure,
fear. Yeah.
oh, sure, oh, sure. I mean, my, one of my children and their spouse stayed in the house for a year, homeschooled their child and wouldn't leave the house and had everything delivered. And if any boxes arrived, they put gloves on and put bleach on the gloves and wipe the outside of the box. And I'm like, I can't believe this.
Fears
Can't
of,
believe it.
yeah. They did a the media in conject hand in hand with some of the government, especially state governments. They did an amazing job at propagandizing the whole thing, and so they
Yes.
created such fear, and that's why they killed people with protocols, is to create, to keep that fear going, and to say,
Oh yeah.
see,
Oh
look,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Well. Look at the fact in December when we went to the hospital and this giant tent was outside.
Yeah,
Nobody was in it.
yeah.
What was it there for? Just fear, just to make people wonder. Oh my God, how many people are in there? Nobody. Nobody.
Mhm.
Nope. Nope. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. Um,
So so that was an awakening for you, and I mean, obviously, since then, you've met many people who have gone through the same thing. Not many survivors. There's not many of us survivors, but um, there are a lot of people who had somebody killed.
that they lost. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah. And with me, within a year and a half, with a lot of intense effort, in July 22, I sold my house. I had to close my husband's business and get rid of all of his 39 years of files. 9 file cabinets had to be destroyed. And I moved out of California and I moved up here to Boise, Idaho.
Mhm.
Um, after after my move to Idaho, my slow heart rate became worse and culminated in my pacemaker, which was installed in St. Adolphus Hospital on March 20th, 24.
Mm-hmm.
I found out, and I have the paperwork that says that remdesivir causes sinus bradycardia, slow heart rate. And my heart rate, when I arrived at the hospital, I drove myself to the hospital that morning. Hey, what do we do? My heart rate was 21. I'd had a heart monitor on for 2 weeks, and they said that there were over 700 times during that 2 weeks that my heart had stopped for, some time, a little bit of time. I had no idea. And when I had done the research and realized that remdesivir caused it, what do you say then? I mean, I now have a heart condition. I now have to be monitored by cardiologists who, by the way, say basically my heart's doing fine as long as I'm on a pacemaker. But it's been nearly 5 years, and this should not have happened to our family. My husband deserved a longer life. He wasn't crippled. He was not, yes, okay, he did have heart problems and all that. But my gosh, he was working full time.
Yeah,
He was active.
Yeah, he was very active. So what other impacts have been prevalent in your life? I mean, I'm obviously there's the big impacts, selling the house, selling the business, moving, but then there are the other what seems to be smaller impacts, but they're big. I call them big little things, like the ambush grief and things like that.
That's right. That's what it was. I mean, I think that's the thing that is difficult for those of us who've lost people like I have. Because my husband died while I was in the hospital, I was like I was numb. Um, um, all I could think is, what am I going to do now? And then I'd feel bad because I wasn't thinking about him. But I just didn't know what to do. Um, and of course, when I went in the hospital, I knew I had diabetes. I wasn't being very careful about it, but when I came out, I was giving myself 35 units of insulin um, every day, and I'm saying, well, gee, I'm managing, I'm doing okay. But then it was within about 6 or 7 months that I'm saying, wait a minute, do I really need, this is just a side thing. Do I really need to be taking this much insulin? And then I was saying to myself, well, I need to get acclimated. I moved here. I need to get a license, driver's license. And I'm saying, gee, my eyes aren't right. And I was trying to figure out what was wrong. And so I went to the eye doctor, and they told me that I definitely had a problem. And so they told me that I was going to need injections in my eyes. And when I tried to get a license, I couldn't pass the test. My eyes were bad, and I don't know why. Why all of a sudden I hadn't had any problem with my eyes before this. And then I started doing some due diligence on something entirely different, if you'll excuse me. I tried trying to figure out why it is or what I could do about diabetes. And I found out I could do something. I could be really careful about my diet, and I could do intermittent fasting. And it took me about 4 months from January 22 until April. I lost 25 pounds without even trying. And my doctor called me when I had a blood test, and he said, well, Dorothy, it looks like you can stop taking insulin. And I said, well, that's good. That's good. I'm down to only taking 6 units this morning because I kept reducing it. Okay. It's amazing what you can discover that might actually make a difference. But in the meantime, my eyes had gotten worse. And now at least I'm down to every 8 weeks. I have to have injections in my eyes. They're not fun, but at least I can still see. I can still see. And then I was worried about my ears, and then they found out that they found out I've been stone deaf on my left side probably since I was born. So 3 weeks ago, they did surgery on my ear, and I walked in the kitchen and closed the refrigerator door. It sounded like a gunshot. So it was,
Hearing's fixed.
oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. So I made some wonderful friends. Um, I and I've also seen the side effects of people who have taken the vaccination.
Yeah.
My sister-in-law in California before I left was one of the only ones who I could go and see. She took the first vaccination, and I saw there were changes in her.
Yeah.
And then her son insisted, and the doctor insisted that she take another one. The changes became pronounced.
Yeah.
And so she called me in June before I left and said, Dorothy, can you come and get me and bring me home? And that's when I found out that her son had put her in a life care community because what had happened to her mind. And I think that it was all because of the vaccination. And I think they found that out. And so when I called to find out whether I could go and see her, they said, yes, I could. But when I got there, they told me, well, have you been vaccinated? And I said, no. And they said, well, you can see her in the garage. We'll open the garage door and you can sit in the garage and you can talk to her. But if you ever come back again, you have to have proof that you've been vaccinated. It was almost like an end. I said, if she's the only one I can see without a problem. I mean, I could finally go see my children. If I drove to their house and got in my daughter's car, we could go out to the ocean or go to the park with the children. But they didn't want to be in my house. They finally got better after about a year. But by then I'd already made up my mind. I knew I couldn't stay in my house anymore. I couldn't afford it. Okay. I couldn't afford it. And I knew I needed to make a change. I knew it, but it was painful, and it still is. There's other things, but I'm not going there.
Yeah. So you did sell the house, and then you did move, and
Yes. And I moved up here, and I stayed in the friends who had been, I mean, they'd been so kind when I knew I needed to move. They actually rented a truck in Idaho and drove it to California so that people could put things in that truck. Another neighbor got me a giant garbage bin, and I filled it. You live in a house for over 35 years, and there's an awful lot of junk to get rid of.
a lot of stuff.
So I had some angels in my life. I mean, I stayed in my friend's RV with my cat from July until September, until I could finally buy a house. And I love my house, and I am so grateful for wonderful angels in my life who've made my life wonderful since. But I still say it shouldn't have happened to him. He should have had more time. He would have delighted. I mean, we had just the year before he died, my daughter had a little baby girl, and he was so delighted. He just couldn't wait. My husband was so he loved babies.
Yeah.
He did, and he would have delighted in being around that baby girl. I knew it.
Yeah. I love, so the Chamber of Commerce wrote this up, right?
Yes, because he was very involved.
Yes. I love that they say Paul will be sorely missed. Paul was a kind man with a generous spirit who grabbed any and every opportunity to make people laugh and feel loved. What a legacy. Legacy.
It was, and like I say, my daughter, she contacted the newspaper, and I couldn't this morning find the article that was in the news on his run for Congress and all the things that he'd done. My daughter did a good job. my children did a good job of taking care of him, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
because I couldn't do it, I knew I
He was
couldn't do it.
he was his son's little league coach for several years. Never missed a ballet, baseball game, bells performance, concert, or football game. That's awesome. Yeah.
I
So
thought that was so well done. It really epitomized who he was and what he did in his life. I mean, I had 43 years with him, and sometimes I go 43 years. How in the
yes, yes.
world?
So
Laughter and tears and more laughter.
and
Oh, that
love,
is so sweet. That is
love,
so
love.
sweet.
Got another one here too. This one.
That was
This
Christmas. That was Christmas 2015 when we finally got all of our children and family together, which was lovely. It was the last time. It was the last time we were all together, and it was lovely. I was so grateful for that. So grateful. We were going
so
to do it again in 2020, and somehow that all fell apart, didn't it?
fell apart. Yeah. So so as we wrap up, I want you to tell people. This is going to be two questions. Then, so number one, um, do you have closing thoughts or advice or anything that you want the general public to know? And then the second question after that one is, can you tell us about maybe one or two favorite memories that you have of Paul?
Oh, okay. I realized a long time ago, um, when I was when I was pregnant with my firstborn, that I realized at that point I became a questioning person. Um, when I went in to see my doctor, and I told him all the things that I didn't want when I had my son, and when he listened to everything that I said, he walked over, he patted my shoulder, and he said, there, dear. When the time comes, we'll take care of everything." And I came home and I told my husband, I said, "I don't even want him there." He said,
Yeah.
I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, there's certain things that I want. I waited all this time to have children and I know what I wanted. He's not listening to me. I want someone who's going to listen." He says, "Well, so what are you going to do then?" I said, "I'm going to find somebody else." So I did. And one of my friends had a baby at home. And I went home and I made an appointment and I went to see that doctor. And I came home and I said, "Hey, Paul, he does deliveries at home." He looked at me, he says, "What's the big deal?" He says, "My mom had all five of us at home." I was, "What? Are you kidding?" Gosh, I had a real reason to go talk to my mother-in-law. And and because of that, and my husband was absolutely supportive, we ended up having four children at home.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
I
Hmm.
mean, 46 years ago with my first one, I never told anybody. I never realized. I used to think of myself as a bit of a rebel. And then I realized, there's another word, but I can't remember it right now. But my husband was so supportive. I mean, he said, "Sure, well, why not? If my mom could do it, I know you can." So we did. We had all four of them at home, and it was marvelous.
Yeah.
And and I, but why did anyway? Things you remember. I mean, and us getting together, we never should have got together. I mean, I kind of feel like your two questions go together.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I met my husband when I was working full time for a company in New York, and he was a real estate broker in New York, and my broker, because I was also working real estate weekends and 2 or 3 nights a week, and I'm at my broker's one night, and she says to me, "You know, how about there's this nice young man I think you should meet." And I looked at her. I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Oh yeah, I mean, Mimi was this wonderful Jewish lady. There is a matchmaker. I'm telling
Matchmakers.
you."
They're born matchmakers. Yeah.
It was incredible. I said, "Well, I don't know." I said, and she's, "Well, I'm going to call him." So she calls him and she tells him, he says, "Well, did you ask her if she wants to meet me?" And so she turns to me and she says, well, and I said, oh, sure. So she calls him back and he says, well, I was just about to eat dinner. And she says, no, 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 forget it. Come on over. So he comes over and he walks into her office. She opens her drawer, gets out a bottle of wine and two glasses, pours wine to both of us, and looks at me and she says, you're off for the evening.
Oh,
And so he took me out and we went together for 6 months. We saw each other Tuesday and Saturday nights for 6 months. And then I said to him, if I died on Wednesday, you wouldn't find out until Saturday. I said, he said, well, that's because you're too busy. I can't get a hold of it. No, there weren't any answering machines,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
All those years ago. And
right.
then my company decided that they should transfer me to Chicago. And I'm thinking, oh my, okay, well. So I mentioned it to him and he says, well, what a wonderful opportunity. And I went, well, I guess that's the end of that. So I was transferred to Chicago and I'm there. And all of a sudden, somebody calls me from downstairs and they say, there's a package down here for you. And I'm, really interesting. So they bring it up. It's a giant box in January. It's
Oh,
got a dozen red American Beauty roses in there. Now, how did he get roses in January?
yeah.
And in it, he says, I hope you arrive safely. I love you, Paul. And I said, what? You wait until I'm this far away to tell me?
That
Oh,
you love me. Yeah.
yes. So I lived there for a year and we were in touch on the phone. And in the meantime, he moved to California. And he says, well, I think you should move to California. And I went, wait a minute. Well, then he sends me eight cards. And the last one says, I think we should formalize our relationship and you should move to California.
Oh,
Man, I mean, 8 cards. And I finally get to the last one and that's what it says. And he said, I'll even take your cat.
oh,
I
sweet.
mean, he,
What,
he was such a romantic. He really was.
that's very romantic. What a wonderful memory.
Yes, I mean, the
Oh,
memories of our children when they were born. I mean, I still remember when our youngest one was born, and he was so delighted. And woke up that morning, and he picks Lara up, and he says, "We have to go see Joy," because the boys, we woke them up, and we had them hold their baby sister right after she was born. But Joy was only 3. He said, well, wait a minute, I got to go in. We got to go in and we got to see Joy. I said, wait a minute, hold it, wait for me. And we went in there and we put Lara on the pillow right next to her sister and woke her up. Here's your baby sister.
what a wonderful experience for the kids that you had the home births and
Yeah, well, admittedly, the older sister said to me later, Mom, you didn't ask me if I wanted a baby sister. But when he met me, it wasn't until later that he realized that I always wanted 6 children. And he was in shock. 6?
yeah,
But he was so good with 4. All the things that we did with them, um, we, I mean, my second son said, Mom, we had such a wonderful childhood. Dad was willing to do so much, go to the city, go to the snow, go play at the beach. I mean, all those things. And I tell people, look, he got an opportunity to still be a child when he was an adult.
yeah.
He really was willing to do so much with them. And it was such a gift. It was
Yeah.
such a gift.
I I so I very much appreciate you sharing your story with us and with the world and sharing a bit about Paul and who he was and giving us that insight into the man who this happened to and of course yourself and I appreciate it. I have always found you to be a woman of great moral courage and so I really love that and respect that about you and
Thank
you
you.
look you look well. I hadn't seen you in a while but you look very well and I'm glad that life is smiling upon you. So, but I appreciate all that you've done, and I'm going to encourage others if they have a story. Protocols or shots. Please put your stories in at betrayalprojectusa.org. These stories matter. We need to change public perception as to what really happened during COVID, or under the guise of COVID, really is what it was, because all of these public health emergencies are just going to keep coming out until we
Yes,
stop them, until we change
yes,
it. We have a real opportunity for change recently. So,
and
in terms of getting rid of the PrEP Act and such.
right, right, and I'm going to continue being a big mouth. I can't
Yeah.
help it.
And
I
I
am
love
going to say, can't help it, can't help it.
we need
Have
more.
to.
The world needs more big mouths. That's what I say. So I appreciate that. So share these stories and be brave to tell your own. Thank you so much, Dorothy.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's still is hard, but I tell myself it's necessary.
Yeah.
It's necessary because we we need to be our own advocates. We
Yes.
have to. We have to find out what really works. And I can't help it. I have to continue doing that. I have to. Even with my doctors today, which is sometimes an interesting situation, truly, because they begin to realize that I don't just go along with what I'm heard, what I'm told. I can't.
Right. You can't. You have to question. So
That's
I
exactly.
appreciate that. Appreciate the words of wisdom. Thank you so much.
Thank you, honey. Thank you. God bless you.